This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 532 for September 21st, 2017. Coming up on today's show, can I be poly if I come too quickly? Coming up on today's show. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Minx. And we have the amazing Ruby Bouie Johnson coming up later in the show to tackle a listener question about premature ejaculation. Yeah, that's right. We're actually talking about sex. We haven't done that in a long time, but we are talking sex and cum and penises and all kinds of yummy stuff later on in the episode. However, there is some really cool stuff happening in the news this week. Polyamory is in Rolling fucking Stone. Yes! Rolling Stone did a huge, over 4,000 word feature piece entitled The Ethical Slut Inside America's Growing Acceptance of Polyamory. Check out the subtitle. Millennials are increasingly embracing non-monogamous relationships, and the 1990s guidebook that helped popularize them is getting an update. Oh yes. Oh yes, I'm so excited. It's a very well-written article, and what I really like is the focus on the fact that this is something that millennials are embracing. They're not just dating around until they settle around, that millennials are really looking into polyamory as an alternative to default monogamy. And it's just It's a really fun article. I encourage you to read the whole thing. I will provide both the link to the original article and to Alan's coverage of it in Poly in the News. But one of the quotes I love from the article is when the reporter was interviewing Janet Hardy, one of the co-authors of The Ethical Slut, whom, yes, we will have on the show next week. She said, 20 years ago, I used to get calls from show producers all the time, and the call would go, "Can you point me towards a poly family that's not either old hippies or screaming geeks?" laughs Hardy. I would say no because A, that's most of my Rolodex, and B, that's who was doing poly back then. But these days, when I speak to poly audiences, they're young professionals, all shiny and new. It's very different. I'm so excited. And it's really true. This is one of the reasons why our sex educator for the new millennium, is often co-hosting the show and is often bringing topics on the show, because millennials are really more thoroughly and completely embracing polyamory than a lot of other generations. It's very exciting. Yeah. Polyamory is in Rolling Stone. I feel like I can die happy now. Now, you may remember last week that we mentioned that there's a movie coming out about the polyamorous creator of Wonder Woman called Professor Marston and the Women. And Alan in the Poly in the News blog has written at least 3 articles about the coverage of it, most of which are very positive. From September 10th, he has an article entitled "The First Reviews Are In for Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, the first serious poly big theater movie." It just premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. It doesn't come out here until mid-October, and the reviews sound really good. Then he has another article on September 13th, more glowing mainstream reviews of Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, including video interview for The Hollywood Reporter, a positive review in the Los Angeles Times, slashfilm.com, and the BBC, Boise Weekly. He's really rounded up all the coverage very nicely. And then most recently, And then most recently, on September 16th, apparently there is a man's magazine that basically got everything wrong about the movie and didn't really do the research. Alan's article is entitled, "Were the Wonder Women in the Marston Triad Sexual Partners? Yes, Despite Men's Health Mag." Alan writes that a careless writer/editor at Men's Health magazine is dismissing the idea that Elizabeth Holloway and Olivia Byrne, the women in the 1940s triad that birthed Wonder Woman, were bisexual partners, as dramatized in this recent movie. Deputy editor E.J. Dixon didn't read enough from the sources she cites. And he points out all the technical errors that she makes, including the following. Consider the assumption behind this that she wrote. We do know, however, that Holloway and Byrne had their own adjoining bedrooms, so Marston could travel back and forth between both without attracting their children's notice. A scenario that most dudes would probably love, but seems somewhat implausible from an architectural layout perspective. Alan writes, it never occurred to her that the door between the women's bedrooms allowed them to go back and forth too on their own. No, because of course sex is always about the guy, right? And, quoting from the article, it is, however, fair to say that Marston's sexual proclivities were fascinating, if not exactly applicable to everyday life. You try convincing your wife to let you have sex with another woman in the name of feminism. To which Alan responds, polyfamilies are waving hello. And I insert, what is this let business? And is there is no assumption that the women perhaps want to have sex with other men and gasp perhaps other women? Anyway, in the article, he continues to cite more and more positive reviews coming in. I don't know. I'm thinking this movie may be the thing that really brings polyamory into the mainstream. We've had a lot of more positive coverage over the last 5 years or so. We've had a lot more mainstream coverage. We've seen some poly themes in films, but really, I think even though this is about the creator of a comic superhero, I think so many people are familiar with Wonder Woman and will be curious about this biopic that I think this may get a lot of people, not even just millennials, talking about polyamory. What do you think? And are we organizing viewing parties? We should be organizing viewing parties. I am thrilled to welcome back to the show, Ruby Bouie Johnson. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Now, for those who may be tuning in for the very first time, or maybe just, skipped the last episode where you were so awesome, would you mind introducing yourself to our fabulous audience?
Okay, my name is Ruby Bouie Johnson. I am a therapist, and I am in the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. And I'm in private practice. I am a sex therapist and a sex educator. Also, I am the organizer for Poly Dallas Millennium, which is a 3-day symposium, and we focus on open relationships, people of color, and same gender-loving communities.
And it's an amazing event that absolutely everybody should go to if you possibly can.
And thank you for being one of our keynotes this past.
Thank you. It was a very powerful experience. I will say that it was an amazing event and a very powerful experience.
Thank you. You were a very powerful speaker.
And I called on you to help out with a question from a listener that is it's more in your area of expertise than in mine. So our listener, Joe, wrote in, and basically he and his wife have been non-monogamous for about 4 years. It's a little bit more swinging. She just started a relationship with a man and shared with Joe that her new guy lasts a lot longer than Joe during sex.
Uh-huh.
And so he says, in the past, I have been in denial and blaming lack of sexual consistency for my brief performances. Your show gave me the tools to stop being defensive and listen to her concern. And what I realized is that from my first sexual experience 12 years ago, I ejaculate prematurely. I'm able to admit I have a problem and am seeking solutions and working hard to seek a long-term solution. Where I'm seeking advice, and because 20 to 30% of men in the U.S. suffer from premature ejaculation, is about how to expand relationship-wise with someone new. My wife so far has had multiple experiences with other men.
Mm-hmm.
May I insert, ain't that the way it always goes? You're not going to be crawling in the women you think you are, but the women are going to be crawling in all the men, and usually women they want. He continues, and I have only had one other experience with a woman at which I came prematurely. I would like to seek some other relationships outside of my marriage, but both of us are concerned about my intercourse performance. I've basically perfected oral due to a lack of stamina. Go you. How do other men who suffer from premature ejaculation engage in poly, and should I fix my PE prior to starting new relationships, or maybe find someone who also comes fast?
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm thinking, how do you put that on a dating profile? Okay. He said, I thought it'd be a fun topic to bring up. So thank you for bringing that up, Joe, because we don't usually talk about sort of the nuts and bolts sexuality on the show. But since we have Ruby here, hell yeah, let's talk PE. What do you think Joe should do?
Well, there's so many questions to ask him about. Has there only been two people that he's experienced PE with? That's the term I'm going to use. And how does he define premature ejaculation? For some people, it all depends on the definition. The actual criteria for PE is there's a mild, moderate, and severe level. And the severe is less than 15 seconds. And the mild is between 30 seconds to 1 minute that the person ejaculates. So I don't know how he is defining it.
Oh, right. Yeah. So for him, it may be like, he wasn't that specific. It could be 5 minutes, which, could be, for me, if we're talking actual PIV, penis in vagina intercourse, I'm like, I don't need 5 minutes of that. I'm good.
Right.
Just a couple of minutes and I'm good.
Right.
Right.
Most women don't need more than that. Yeah.
But I don't know if we're talking about just sexual play in general.
Right. And that's the thing he doesn't clarify. I mean, there is situational PE and then there's generalized. And the generalized PE is it happens like when he's masturbating. It would happen with most all partners, and that's when it's actually what they call a disorder. But if it's just something that happens with his wife or his partner and not anywhere else, then it's something maybe within that relationship that needs to be worked out.
That's true. We really only have 2 data points here. Yeah. We have the experience with his wife and her experience with her new partner taking a little bit longer, but we don't know how much longer. And that's a good point. How long does it take when you masturbate? That would be a very interesting question to ask.
Yes, it would be a very interesting question. On another point is, how fair is it that she's comparing her new partner, to her current partner? I just think that's bad practice.
Yeah, I didn't want to comment on that because I wanted to zero in on the actual question that he asked. It's generally considered kind of bad form to compare one partner to another in terms of anything, performance or looks or language, communication, anything. It's kind of like with your pets, and you're with your pets and kids, you want to give positive feedback and you want to ignore the stuff that you don't like unless it falls into the realm of abuse.
Yeah, and that's kind of placing this relationship is lacking. Not that it's different. I have different things I want to do, but this one is lacking in this particular area. And the lacking piece of it may be construed as shaming to him, which will have the PE even more, pronounced. It's very difficult to get past PE, that psychological piece, because it's basically you become a spectator in your own sexual experience. And so, him going out, and finding new partners to explore may actually be a very interesting experiment for him.
Yeah, it does sound like it's a concern that she has brought up in the past. So
Right.
whether it meets the clinical definition or regardless of the performance with any other partner, it's basically not working for her. So
Right.
it sounds like his coping mechanism for that has been, well, he mentions being defensive and denying that
Right.
there was an issue,
Right.
which there may not be an actual issue when he gets to other partners, but
Right.
there is with her. If she says it's an issue, right? So
Exactly.
and he mentioned that he has this coping technique of working on oral.
Well, that's a very good.
That's a good technique anyway. Let's just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, some of the recommendations when someone is experiencing PE within their relationships is to not focus on PIV or penis and vagina or penis and wherever, right? It's to actually focus on the other pleasures within a relationship, because the big O, or the orgasm, the ejaculation, is only a small piece. And maybe kind of taking a look at what is the reason this is so important, for you or for your partner. I mean, there's so many sexual scripts wrapped around ejaculation, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Has always been interesting to me, especially in polyamorous relationships. I mean, I am actually dealing with this with a client right now where he has delayed ejaculation. And yeah, this is where even with masturbation, he cannot takes 30 minutes or more for him to reach peak to come.
That's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and so, but his partner is saying this is very painful.
Yeah. I don't know very many women who want 30 straight minutes of PIV. Most women I know, now not everybody, but most women I know are like, yeah, a couple minutes and I'm good. You don't need to pound on me all night. Yeah.
Right. If he wants to focus on within his relationship, of course, I highly recommend, if needed, go and see a sex therapist. But usually a sex therapist is the last resort in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
Suggest that maybe he takes a look at, is there anything, physiological that's happening, maybe do a physical workup for another explanation, maybe explore his own body, him and his partner, like get in touch with touch, and what is it? Is touch something that is overstimulating for him, and how can he control that? There's tantric exercises. There's so many solutions.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you would suggest tantric exercises. I know there are specific techniques that are used for both partners to delay orgasm for not just minutes, but hours on end.
Yeah. There's, of course, orgasmic meditation that some people use, which is a type of tantric exercise. Additionally, there is it's so psychological when you sit into the body. But here's the real interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
With men, once they are in the, hey, we're about to blast off, there's no stopping. It's going to happen. So if a woman is at that peak and she's like, I'm about to come, she can stop and pull back and not come. Having a man get to the point of, okay, what can you do to sit back and breathe, do some mindfulness, meditate, so that you actually don't reach that point of no return. So that's a couple of, there's some great books out there or some websites that actually could assist with that.
Ooh, any in particular you'd recommend?
There is this great hub of educational videos. I don't consider it porn, but it is locked down, and it's actually like 200 videos that are instructional, that are very good. They're short and it's guided, and it's a great tool for you and your partner to use. And I'll send you that hub. The guide to getting it on, there's a couple of sections within that book that actually assist with working with him and his partner, and I don't want to just, use heterosexual language, actually assist with some other practices that you can utilize.
I want to get to the poly question. Any other ideas on things that he could do to physically explore the PE?
Outside of the usual medication that they recommend for people that can slow it down, I would suggest to kind of figure out with him, what is it about? Is it the performance anxiety that has it coming forth, and kind of do a journal, about his last sexual experience, and kind of have him think about what happened and write about it. Write about the physical context. Was it her smell? Was it the idea that it was coming? Was it foreplay that was just kind of look at those elements that help with arousal? Sometimes the process between desire and arousal, it's sometimes conflated within the body, that is always on the edge, and it's a hypersensitivity to the process. And so that's also something to take a look for himself, because unfortunately I can toss the kitchen sink out at him, but only he can actually say, okay, this is what's going on inside of my body, mentally, etc. It could have started when he was 12 years old and someone shamed him because he came too quick. I don't know what 12-year-old can say that they had PE, but
Well, he said the first sexual experience was 12 years ago.
Oh, 12 years ago. Oh,
so,
okay.
But he doesn't talk about masturbation, so we don't know if that's true for masturbation as well, or at what age he started that. But it's been 12 years of sexual experiences that have demonstrated this issue.
Okay, so that's even a different twist, because I'm wondering if it was with the same woman or not. That's real interesting.
Because I know that we can imprint on some of our first sexual experiences. Right. So I wonder if there's something positive or negative about that experience that sort of psychologically and emotionally is driving some of this. It's very your work is so interesting. You get to dig into all of this.
It is. And, one of my fears is that putting a pathology to it is so hard within my clinical mind, is not to automatically go into this is a disorder, because PE doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote a disorder. Actually, I don't really consider it on many levels that it's sometimes categorized as that so that doctors can treat it, but it's a physiological response. Your body is this amazing thing that will respond no matter if you want it to or not sometimes.
Yeah. So let's get into the question he asked about poly, which I think is really interesting. So he asked, how do other men who are living with PE engage in poly? And do I have to fix it before I start a new relationship? Or do I have to find somebody who also comes like at the same speed that I do? What would you say to him on that issue?
If he's heterosexual, I will say this, is that the refractory period that, happens, the good thing about a woman is that it doesn't have to be a contest of who comes first, because a woman's going to come again and again and again. Woohoo! Yes.
Depending upon the woman.
Yeah,
I will point out, I come like a man. I come once and then I'm rollover pizza. Don't fucking touch me. So.
Oh man, that is awesome.
So most women, but not all.
That is very true. Not all. It's more likely that a woman will have a multi-orgasmic experience within that arena. And that's, of course, very true. You can talk to the partner that you are with, but that's maybe part of his belief system, that he has to have a partner that comes either before or at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's like, this has to happen first before this happens. And that's a lot of pressure right there. And so with polyamory, how one can utilize it or get to that point within a relationship to where, I would at some point, have a discussion about sex.
Yeah.
One of the great things in polyamory is that we are communication people, hopefully. And so if you know how to talk about sex in a non-judgmental, non-shaming way, in a safe environment, you could be very surprised how a lot of issues are resolved right there.
Yeah. And it occurs to me that I love this opportunity to talk to a potential partner and say, how do you like to have sex? You know, what are your favorite things? What kind of pacing do you like? What kind of activities do you like?
Right.
You know, do you like to come first? Do you? And actually, I'm recalling now that I was with a partner, a long-term boyfriend, and he apologized one time and he's like, oh, I came too quickly, or he was worried that he would. And he had an amazing recovery time. So he could come and then 2 seconds later, he could go again. So one of my questions for Joe is it one and done? Or if you have a short recovery time where you can actually go straight into sex after you come? I loved this with my partner because I love bukkake and I love it when guys come on me. So this way I would be like, okay, let's use that. So you come on me so that I've got all this great cum to play with. And then we can take time because the second time took a little bit longer. And I was like, then you can go do all the PIV stuff, which is nice too. But, you know, that was actually a turn on for me that he would come on me first. And most people I was with at that time couldn't do that. It was just the one and done. And I loved that. I was like, hey, twice the fun. So there's a question for Joe is, you know, is this something that you can, if you have a short recovery time, you know, this could be something that could be it could be a selling point. I'm just saying. Yeah.
And I actually like that because it doesn't have to be a finale if you come. I mean, that's just the first part. What is that?
Act one.
Thank you.
It's the overture. It's the orchestra warming up.
Big O, we could go all the way with this one. And so the refractory period for men, it's so relative. Basically, it just depends on the guy. If some men can come and keep on going straight through to another time, they kind of work their way through that. It's all such a body thing, that would be a very good question to maybe even talk, because he can masturbate first and then go into act 2.
It's so true. He could. And, you know, if he has a longer recovery time, you know that there's a philosophy out there that says fuck first, basically fuck before you go to dinner. So, that, you know, basically just do it first and then you can go out and enjoy your dinner and you're all relaxed and you're not wondering about how it's going to go. So maybe he could do the quick fuck first.
I am thinking about something about Mary right now.
And then go to... Hell yeah.
Oh, fuck.
And then if his recovery time is more like, what do you call it? Refractory period?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's more like an hour versus a minute, then it's like, you know, do a quick fuck first and then, or even maybe masturbate first and then like go to dinner, have the day, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, 2 hours later after you've had food and wine and conversation, then you do act 2.
Dessert.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And you can make it fun. And that's another one. It may be an opportunity that he does find someone who likes to have it shot, you know, a nice white. I'm thinking about my black skin and white cum. You may not have that visual. I'm sorry.
That's an awesome visual.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it right now.
We'll make sure to put up a picture of your non-cum covered face just so that, you know, we don't get blocked on iTunes, but of your face so people can picture this.
Because I'm a cum girl too.
Yeah.
I really am.
Cum's awesome.
Yeah, I like to swallow more than have it. This is too much information.
It is not too much information.
I have actually gotten 5 new clients from your podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Love that.
I may even get more now.
They're like, oh, she's the cum therapist. Awesome.
Oh my gosh. That's kind of cool though. Wait a minute.
Yes, we'll brand you as the cum whisperer.
Oh yeah. Can I have a movie kind of like, Robert Redford? I have a penis and, in a field and I got to tame it.
You can, but it's probably going to be in the adult section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So I do love that advice, though. Back to Joe. I like the advice that just because you're characterizing this as a challenge and, your wife has mentioned that it's an issue doesn't mean that you can't have fun with it.
Right.
As I say, when I was with a guy who felt that he came too quickly, I'm like, dude, let's use that. We can, right. This is a good thing.
Right. And that was probably very nice for him, very a nice perspective that someone is not shaming him because he does, in his mind come too quickly.
And the truth is that if that weren't the case, if he felt he came too quickly and maybe he couldn't have another, orgasm for a long period of time, we would have come up with something else.
Right.
Right. If you want to be with somebody, you can find a way. I love your idea of keeping a notebook and seeing, is it a word? Is it a touch?
Uh-huh.
Is it a particular situation? Kind of trying to figure out if there's something that is the trigger for that.
Yeah.
And then set up a couple of dates where we're doing a scientific experimentation.
Yes.
It's not sex. This is for the notebook. This is for the scientific notebook.
This is for science. Yes.
This is for science. Put that on your OkCupid profile. I want to come in your face for science.
Oh,
and I hope you don't feel with our laughter, Joe, I really hope you don't feel with our laughter that we're mocking you, because we're not. We're encouraging you to have some fun. This is not the end of the world. Right? As you point out, a percentage of men have this. It doesn't mean you can't date. It doesn't mean that, your sex is any better or worse than anybody else's. It just means that, like most of us, you kind of got a preference and you got something you got to work around, but that workaround can be a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the thing is, they give these arbitrary numbers of what is premature ejaculation, but it's so subjective. Sometimes I like a quickie. I want to bend over, give me 1 minute, and I'm out the door.
Yeah.
I don't need a 15-minute marathon. I'm 44 years old. I'm old, and,
you got shit to do.
I got shit to do, and my body can't stay in that position too long. I got bad knees. I get tired quick. I'm in menopause. I ain't got time for all that extra. So 2 minutes max. Not playing. It's all fun, but I know that there is such an attachment to masculinity around the biological genitalia and that white, clear substance that comes out. It's like it's a symbol of I am procreating, I'm spreading my seed. For some women, that's a very big thing. If their partners don't come, they take it personally. If they come too quick, they take it personally. I have some compassion for men because of that.
I agree. I know that there's a lot of expectations that society places on women in terms of sexuality, but let's acknowledge that there are some expectations that society places on men. You don't have to submit to those expectations, but let's just acknowledge that they're there.
Right. And it's such a a big part of sex therapy is dismantling those beliefs, values, and expectations, and actually attitudes around sex that are barriers to our sexual health. Because, part of our sexual health is to have pleasure, to have good relationships, to have intimacy and connection without fear. If there is a fear within the relationship at some level where it's creating this anxiety, it's really important to explore that so it doesn't become this Grand Canyon of a wedge, in your sexual health with your partner.
Exactly. You don't want a little bit of prematurity to, basically ruin your relationships. It's, it's important. Coming is important, but it's not that important.
Right. And the weight that we put on it is basically the position that we place it. And there's so many things that he can explore. And I actually have a list here that I pulled out of my notes while we were talking. One of them is fantasy. and this will be really interesting, is maybe they can prolong the sexual experience, not just with foreplay necessarily, but with role play.
Let's play dress up. Yeah, dress up is fun.
But you can get a harness, a whip, all kinds of things.
Ooh, mechanic and the gal who can't afford to pay her bill. Ooh, the maid, the secretary. So much fun.
It is. Or let's go to a bar and see what happens in the bathroom. And so...
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and another one is expanding the sexual, creativity, which is one that we already mentioned. Sensate focus is one of those things, one of those activities where you spend time with your partner over a certain amount of time exploring touch and the body. And you'll be really, really, it's very interesting to figure out within the male body for men to figure out that they can come without ejaculation. And so, sitting with the body and exploring that's part of that tantric exercise book that I'm going to send you. It's actually called Urban Tantra. Thank you. I got it. Urban Tantra is awesome. That's the name of the book. And so that's a great book.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by friendly polyamorists everywhere.
Very, very well. And also educating your partner about it, educating his wife that this is not some male or moral deficiency. So, and when he gets into new polyamorous relationships, being able to go in very informed, and confident with his new relationships because he's starting afresh, starting new can be really, really empowering for him sexually.
Indeed. These are some amazing ideas, and I can't believe we've been talking for half an hour already, Ruby. I feel like we could talk all day, but we should probably draw a line.
Oh, wow.
Ruby, where can people find you if they want to find out more?
For sex therapy, www.sextherapistruby.com or blacksexgeek.net.
And those are the best ways to contact you.
Yes. And if you want to know about Poly Dallas, you can go to Poly Dallas Millennium, which is the symposium. We're having our fourth one, July 13th through the 15th, 2018 in Dallas, Texas.
You should go.
Yes.
Ruby, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us to address this issue in a really fun way. Joe, I really hope that was helpful.
Yes. And Joe, if you have any issues or concerns, you have a free 1-hour consultation with me on the phone. Give your information to Minx and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Ruby, thanks so much for coming on today.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to Ruby for joining us. It was always fun to talk with Ruby, and I hope, Joe, that we helped you a little bit with your question and gave you some ideas on different ways you could approach it. Well, I want to thank Ruby for joining us. I want to thank Joe for writing in. Thanks to all our awesome playmates who subscribe and support us every single month. We are a free resource. We've helped hundreds of thousands of people navigate their introduction to and success with polyamory. And your donations keep the podcast free for everybody both inside and outside the community. You can email us, polyweekly@gmail.com. Call 802-505-POLY with a question, comment, or feedback. And if you have any type of business proposition for us, speaking, teaching a class, if you want us to come teach at your conference or even maybe do a Skype lesson to your group, email lustyguy@polyweekly.com and we'll get that set up for you. That being said, thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, it's not all about the sex.